r/AskReddit. What industry is a lot shadier than it seems? My dad knows a story from someone who works for a nationwide grocery chain. They have to deal with an Italian mafia to import balsamic vinegar. More businesses than you think have to deal with mafiosos and gangsters. I once helped the gang relations person with Habitat for Humanity get reassurance that their volunteers would be protected in an American inner city. They apparently always speak with the gangs beforehand for safety reasons. More people died last year over vanilla in Madagascar than cocaine in South America. They've even coined the term vanilla murder. Farmers hire armed mercenaries to guard their crops from thieves near harvest time, and if one is caught, well, let's just say it's in response to all the farmers that were killed by thieves for the same reason. This article is a fairly light read on the subject without anything too graphic, but there's a great deal of information about it floating around, along with some pretty disturbing accounts. I'm going to start using "that's vanilla" to mean extreme. When people tell me I'm misusing the phrase, I'll tell them about the vanilla murders. Rating services like Yelp refuse to advertise, and your good reviews magically get rearranged. Hey, look, if you want to do that and be transparent, I get it. But most every business owner knows how scummy this is, and most clients just have no idea. I have a business that isn't something that would usually be looked for on Yelp. They called and I just froze. Luckily I do long-term rentals and was sold out. Explained I wouldn't have an opening for months. They seemed to leave me alone. Yet they have my business on the front page of Google search under the wrong category. I read an article a few months ago about a pizza place that Yelp tried to screw over. When rating services like Yelp first started popping up, the owner thought it was a good idea and encouraged customers to leave reviews. He would regularly check reviews. Yelp eventually reached out to make a deal. The owner didn't like the idea and turned them down. Shortly after, he discovered Yelp was taking down any and all high rated reviews. The owner wasn't having any of it, so he started a new promotion. Any customer who leaves a 1-star review of Yelp gets half off their pizza. It became the first 1-star business on Yelp. The place got so popular that Yelp started taking down the 1-star reviews. Eyeglasses. You have no idea the snow job they put most people through when it comes to buying them. It's far worse than trying to buy a new car from a dealership. Wholesale frames are about $5-20. Wholesale lens blanks are another $10. Any kind of dip coating, tinting, etc. is negligible cost and effort to apply. Literally pennies. To top it off, they don't even do a whole lot in-house, but send it to labs, which are basically sweet shops that can take up to 2 to 3 weeks when labor time is literally under 5 minutes. Instead of training real opticians and technicians, they are just glorified sales staff now. Most of the time they don't even bother with proper measurement for PD, frame width, or arm fitting. Was an optician in the early 90s. I'm horrified at what the business has become. Pet industry. Basement puppy mills and dogs that are so inbred they can hardly breathe. There are plenty of ethical breeders out there, and some unlicensed breeders are ethical, even if in a legal gray zone. But the conditions of some of the so-called puppy mills can be really bad. Sometimes when breeds are mixed, and the pup gets the recessive genes the breeders weren't looking for, they straight up euthanize it, because they know it won't sell. Not to mention how many purebreds are actually not pure at all, and sold as is. Shady. I used to work as a mechanic, and I damn well know some things they overcharge the customer for way too much. One time a girl came into my shop, maybe late 20s, you could tell she had no idea about cars. Well, there was some snow the last few weeks, and she brought her car in because her roof concaved in on top where the snow sat, so now there's a bowl-like spot on her car roof. So she asked us if we could somehow fix it, so my manager came up, told her he'll take a look, so she goes and sits in the lobby area. My manager opens the car door and looks at the roof for 3 seconds before slamming his fist up into the roof of the car, pushing the collapsed roof back to normal. He kept the car in the shop for an hour and spent maybe 10 minutes rubbing the dents out. He charged her $700 for a good bunch. Glad I'm not in that industry anymore. The maritime industry. Most of the big companies do things by the book and treat crews well, because they are afraid of lawsuits and unions. But many smaller mom and pop companies break laws and violate safety regulations with reckless abandon because they are not as visible and can stay under the radar, so to speak. It's very common for a small company to ask a captain/crew to do something illegal and dangerous in order to increase profit, and for the captain/crew to comply out of fear of losing their jobs. And that's just the US maritime industry. Sailors from poorer nations who work on ships are often fed little more than rice and cheap ramen for months at a time and paid pennies for their back-breaking work. I love running tugs for a living, but the industry as a whole is rife with shady business. IDK if it falls under maritime, but I took one look at the job listing for a cruise ship and now I tell all my cowhawkers to never take a job with one. I'm a stage hand and theater technician. I make decent money fresh out of college. $18-24 an hour depending on venue, even without joining the union, because I do specialized work. Looked into a lighting tech spot on a cruise ship, and I'd be getting minimum wage working 50 hours and 7 days a week. Wi-Fi on board costs money out of my paycheck. I'd be in charge of passenger safety off hours. If an alarm goes off and we have to get people onto rescue rafts, I'd have a roommate in a small bunk, and all my wages would go directly into a ship debit card so I could give my income straight back to the company to eat. Something about living and working on a boat in the middle of the ocean seems to make employers think they don't have to actually care for their employees. I can imagine working on a boat that isn't filled with people on vacation would be even worse. A lot of hobby fish importing is pretty shady. You have farms of certain types of fish like bettas in some areas of the world that are run with the fish in horrible conditions, which is why a lot of the ones you get in a major chain store are sick before you even bring them home. The stores will blame the fish being stressed, but I've ordered and received hundreds of fish from small breeders/sellers and outside of Cory catfish that really enjoy committing suiciding by poisoning their own water. The fish arrive healthy and fine. Outside of boutique fish farming, the way some wild fish are caught is just horrible. The trappers will likely poison the water supply to knock out the fish, then scoop them out of the water without a care for that area's ecosystem. This has led to depletion of some natural species to the point they are now endangered. Lastly, boutique fish sellers/major chains do not give half a rat's but what happens to the fish in the end. This means that people who buy fish like plecas, bettas, goldfish, etc. end up getting sick of them and dumping them in local waterways to supposedly get rid of the problem. So in some areas, these fish have completely destroyed the local water ecology because, like other invasive land species, they were never meant to be there. One of the worst offenders is the lionfish in Florida. It's venomous and has no natural predators, so its population has exploded out of control. Basically, releasing fish into the wild is a terrible idea. Releasing any animal into the wild can have disastrous consequences, but fish are being released into a very limited ecosystem and outside of a few diseases. If they can adapt to the water and have no predators, they will survive and breed incredibly quickly. I love my fish. I love the hobby, and there's a lot of value to it as global warming may make things like reef tanks a valuable source of coral in the future. But there's also a lot of bad to it. Doesn't the beauty industry have a problem with child labor? I remember watching a thing where a journalist goes to India to see the mines where children mine some sort of mineral to make bronzer. Edit. The mineral is mica, and someone pointed out the video where I remembered this from. Yes, they mine mica and it's in almost every beauty product. It adds shimmer to the product. This will probably get buried, but glitter. A manager of one of the biggest glitter manufacturers, Glitterx, said in a 2018 interview that most of the glitter they make goes to one buyer for a single industrial use. When asked who the buyer was and why they need so much glitter, she said, "Oh, I definitely can't disclose that." When asked why, she said because they don't want anybody to know it's glitter. Ever since this interview, people have been trying to guess what company or industry secretly uses most of the world's glitter and why they want to keep that use under wraps. I heard the answer to this was the boat industry. It's put into the paint to make it look better. That's a logical explanation, but it still begs the question. If most of the world's glitter is used in paint, why don't they want anybody to know that? It wouldn't devalue the vehicle or the paint at all. That question always pushes me toward it being something edible. That's what's always got me hung up on answers. If it was boats, why would it be a secret? I agree, has to be something people wouldn't expect glitter to be in. Wouldn't like it if they found out there was glitter in it. What's with all the secrecy? That's what makes it suspicious. Advertising. We don't really give an F if it works. We already got your money. Even better, it's practically impossible to say it didn't work. Your sales stayed flat? Just think how much they would have dropped if you didn't run that ad campaign. And when you go out of business, we sell to the business that takes your place. Well, if they spent more on advertising, they wouldn't have gone out of business. Sunglass industry. Punny business, but yes, it's true. I'll use Oakley as an example because it's literally close to home. Oakley has not been the same since they were bought out. Oakley was a great company to work for with great bonuses, swag, and extremely high company morale. Their HQ is one of the coolest buildings you could find, and the people were always happy to work for a legendary company that really treated their employees right. Oakley knew their customers well, but at the end of the day, it's still a business. And Luke Sotica wanted that business. Luke Sotica bought them out in the end, but not through Oakley's own will. You see, Luke Sotica owns nearly all the major glasses brands and the stores that carry them. They are one step short of a full monopoly of the entire global eyewear industry. Luke Sotica wanted Oakley, so they took Oakley off all the shelves of every major glasses retailer until Oakley could do nothing but give in. Squeezed dry until they had to be bought at nicer price for Luke Sotica. The non-profit world. Unfortunately, most people at the top are in it to make a name for themselves and don't usually care about the mission of the organization. The last company I worked for was a small non-profit helping the homeless, and they did care and did a lot of good work. But the old CEO retired, and the new one the board brought on was more interested in her own ego than anything. Fast forward 2 years from that point. 10 out of an original staff of 35 were let go in the span of 2 months, including me. Several programs had to be scaled back or stopped entirely. The organization came under direct auditing scrutiny from local and state government for questionable financial choices the CEO made, like using funds to travel by air what would normally be a 2-hour drive, repeatedly. And that CEO then resigned because of the hostile work environment created by the city. Another org a friend works for has come under fire for its CEO firing anyone that disagreed with her, especially when they stood up to her making potentially illegal decisions. And that's far from an isolated story. There's a lot of good people in the lower levels, but the C-level execs of these companies are sometimes crazy. Apparently tiger zoos. Edit. Thank you for the gold. You will probably never recover financially from this. Mental health facilities. A lot of people trust today's mental health facilities, but from my experience they are quite flawed. Staff can be judgmental and condescending and downright cruel. A family member of mine was institutionalized for a while. I say with full certainty she was healthier before she went in than coming out. The places I've seen are most definitely for profit. They had no intentions of having her fixed and released. Also, sloppy. She was given the wrong people's meds several times. She was also prescribed dangerous combinations that wound up having her sent to the ER. Really stupid mistakes were made over and over. Can confirm. My fiance, before I met her, tried to kill herself over 15 times. She's been hospitalized half of those times and sent to residential, long-term mental facility, 3. Every time she went she was abused/neglected and was forced to stay way longer than she needed to stay. Last time she went she was raped by a fellow patient, but did not tell anyone until the facility was forced to send all patients, those who were there during the rapist's time, a letter stating that charges were being pressed, and if you were a victim, show up at court at such and such date. The rapist pleaded insane and got away with it. It is sad. We have 6, but sometimes she has flashbacks, which then ruins the mood. Not complaining, but she is such a sweet and amazing woman. It's a shame that it happened to her. Health insurance. In the commercials it is all about caring for your health and stuff. But if you ever get a serious illness, they will do anything to avoid paying for your treatment. Source: my mother got breast cancer and her health insurance made a business decision to let her die rather than pay the $40,000 for her treatment. They made that decision, then hired lawyers to make it happen. My mom got to fight them in court while going through chemo. She made it by mortgaging the house. She told me the insurance company caused her more stress than the prospect of dying. The wedding industry, at least in the US. The whole point of the wedding industry is to trick people into overspending by preying on their desire to have the perfect wedding. So you have to have multiple photo shoots, a beautiful venue, excellent catering, an expensive dress/suit, etc., all at an exorbitant price. It's a scam. A lot of traditional wedding staples, like the white dress, service performed by minister, etc., are based on actual traditions and beliefs, but those traditions don't mean anything anymore and now are sold as traditional to squeeze more money out of you. Tell me, why would you ever need 1,000 photographs each of your engagement, your first look, the ceremony, the bridal party, etc.? How many of the 50 good ones are you going to actually look at and will mean anything? Maybe a handful. The rest just get dumped on social media and forgotten in a few months. I'm not saying that you shouldn't take pictures at your wedding. You should. But there's no reason to spend thousands to take pictures of contrived setups, like the first look. I've been to and been in a number of weddings of my friends and have seen the ludicrously overpriced things the planners convinced them to buy into. And that's just the financial side. That's not even getting into the insanity that is planning the damn thing. Trying to get families on board and compromise their demands is a whole other shady industry. Yes, but you really missed a lot of the big problems with the industry. I worked weddings for a while and the pressure in include every old tradition and new fad into your special day, or usually special 3 months worth of events, is definitely a problem. It's pretty avoidable. Just don't do all the extra stuff. The part that is a lot sneakier is wedding pricing. A white tiered cake is $300. A white tiered wedding cake is $1,200. Event photography is $800. Wedding photography is $6,000. Table and chair rentals are $400. Wedding table and chair rentals are $1,800. Some of the increased pricing makes sense for things like photography, where there is a legitimate difference between a wedding and most events, but most of it is completely made up, just because people's wedding budget is always going to be higher than any other event budget. Some pro tips for anyone planning: don't tell your vendors it's for a wedding, unless you absolutely have to. If you're hiring people, you should tell them: band, photogs, DJs, etc. If you're hiring goods, food, equipment rentals, venue, they don't need to know. Don't include wedding in your web searches. Wedding invites often costs $4 to $8 an envelope. Printing and packing the exact same thing through any other printer is usually between $0.80 and $2. Think of what you need and, at its core, what it is. You don't need a ring pillow, you need a pillow. You don't need a wedding guest book, you need a journal. You don't need a wedding dress, you need a dress. Adding the word wedding to any product will double, triple, or quadruple the price instantly. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification, if or else the wedding industry will show up in your room tonight.